Okay, language tags. Well, language tags are a thing that was invented by the industry that we've embraced. But the first thing you need to know about language tags is that they aren't language tags. What am I talking about? Well, what was a language tag invented for? It was invented to tag language data. Now, all text is in an orthography. So in effect, a language tag is telling you what orthography the text is in. Now, audio and video are special cases, and they're sort of grandfathered in or shoehorned in a special way. But basically, all text is in an orthography, and therefore a language tag is actually an orthography tag. And further, they use language tags to identify locales. That's region-specific information, number separators, all that kind of stuff. So here's an example, a couple of examples. The first one is AZ, which I think is Azerbaijani. And the second one is Luma. Luma being a non-intelligible dialect of Akha, as used in Laos using Latin script. And here's a tag that can help identify the Latin script they're used for that. So what do we use language tags for? Well, they're basically database keys. They're a string that we can use to key into a database. So we use them to key into locale information. I'll explain the alphabet soup a bit later on, SLDR and CLDR. We use them with keyman keyboards. If you're looking for resources in a language, so moving away from tools, now we're looking for resources in a language. How do you find those resources? Well, the best way is to use a language tag. So the DBL is keyed off the language tag, or it should be. Progress Bible is keyed off language tags. All sorts of other places are keyed off language tags. So I thoroughly recommend language tags because it's almost like a curated keying system for orthographies in language information. Now, there are two kinds of tags, really. There's a minimal tag, which is what most people think of as a language tag. Okay, it consists of, well, sufficient information to identify what's going on. So you start out with a language code, which is from ISO 639. It might be the 2-letter code if there's a 2-letter code, or the 3-letter code. And this is often enough because most languages have one orthography. And so we say, yeah, that 3-letter code, that's my language tag. I'm done. Go home. But sometimes they have more than one orthography, or they're using more than one script. And so you need a script tag component to it. So you have 3-letter code dash AKH dash Latin. Or you need a region tag to disambiguate the fact that in this country, they write things slightly differently from in that country, and I want to actually identify that. Or there are registered variants that have been registered with the IETF, the standards people, and you stick a variant in, and the variants can be used for things like, I'm using IPA. That's an example of a variant. Or there are what we love to use an awful lot of, which is private use variants, where you don't have to go and register them. And we use those for dialects, or we use them for orthography variants. The full specification for this thing can be found in this wonderful mislabeled document that is great if you are having jet lag and you want to go to sleep. You should read BCP 47, and it works every time. You'll be out in no time. Now, maximal tagging is the other extreme, and this is a kind of tag that has everything you want to know in the tag. It tells you the language, it tells you the script, it tells you the region, it has all the necessary variants. So in effect, what we want is something that tells us what the minimal tag is and what the maximal tag is. So for English, EN being a minimal tag, actually most people, the maximal tag that we use for it is EN Latin US. And as an Englishman, I think this is absolutely abhorrent, but I will accept it, and I love you all. So EN Latin US is the maximal tag. And what we effectively have is a set of tags that are semantically equivalent. So we've come up with this thing called a tag set. So here, EN is the same as EN Latin, is the same as EN US, and is the same as EN Latin US. And all of those tags basically mean the same thing. So if you see one of them, you can use any of them. Any of those tags, you can then convert either to the short one, EN, or to the long one, EN Latin US, depending on what you want to do with it and how you want to use it. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, we have collected every language, every tag set that we could find. And we've put it into this file, which you can download from the LDML API called langtags.json. It's a JSON file and it's everything you need to know. It even provides language to orthography mapping, although not every language has a default orthography. So you have to be careful there because some languages haven't agreed which script is dominant. So you have to be a little bit careful. Nothing is absolutely certain in the world of language tags. It's a real pain. We want certainty as programmers, and it isn't there. It's always a little bit ambiguous. And the deeper you get into it, the messier it gets. And then everybody yells at me because it's complicated. And I go, I know it's complicated. Sorry, but we're doing our best. So let's have a look at langtags.json. If you haven't seen it, I commend it to you. What you have is basically a JSON file with just a list of records. In the records, you have a bunch of fields. The fields are sorted in alphabetical order. So I'm going to highlight a few bit by bit so we can look at them. So the tag one down the bottom there, that is the minimal tag. And up the top, there's the full tag. And then there is the tags, which is the list of all the other tags that are equivalent. So here we have Azerbaijani. AZ is its tag. And then there's, notice that AZJ, which is a variant of Azerbaijani, has been folded into AZ. This is basically to do with ISO 639. Well, no, this is actually a dialect that has died off and been merged in. So again, we deal with all of that complexity of, well, that thing over there is basically that thing over there, and they've deprecated that and they changed it last year, and this is what it needs to be. And we try and keep this up to date. So you have all that. And then Windows has its own weird ideas about how tags should work, that you should always have a script. So that's the Windows tag we put in there if you need that for working with Windows. Other information that's in the record. Well, there's the ISO 639-3 code. So the 3-letter code, even if there's only a 2-letter code needed for the tag, we put that in so you can find it. We break out the region and the script, and we even give you an English name for the region for those who need it. So it saves you having to parse tags. You can just pull all this information out from the JSON file. Then we put some names in. Now this gets interesting. Most people are using the IANA registry from IANA, which has a lot of useful information in it. And we have the IANA list of names there. But you can get yourself into hot water because sometimes IANA uses what are known as pejorative names. The language group really do not like the name that IANA has given them. And that's a problem. So we go through and we try hard to make sure that the name field there is a good name that you can use, that it's safe. This basically comes from the ethnologue. And then the names list as well is a bunch of other names that the ethnologue has. And in this case, the name happens to be the same as the IANA name, and it's not in that other list. So getting the right name of a language can be quite tricky, and we do our best to help you with that. Then there's local names. So here we have what are called the autonym, the name of the language in the language, that's a local name, and a list of other autonyms, other names within the language for it. And then there's a few extra little bits and bobs. There's a list of regions. So what this says is that any of these regions are also equivalent. So AZ-AF is also equivalent to AZ, and AZ-AM, and AZ-Latin-AF, and AZ-Latin-AM, and AZJ-Latin, and all of those are equivalent. And we didn't unpack them all in the tags, otherwise we'd be there all day. We just list the regions and let you swap them in for all the other tags. There's also a little flag that tells you whether there's an LDML file in the SLDR in case you need that information. And then there's this catch-all thing called variants. What this says is that for Azerbaijani, there's another tag set, completely separate, which is AZ-Baku 1926. And this basically says you can slot this variant in, everything else is the same, and you just put this Baku 1926 and you get a completely different tag set. We didn't put every tag set in unpacked. We leave you to do that programmatically. And this enables you to find yet more tag sets. And then there's a few housekeeping special records that we have just to confuse you. There's each of these start with have a tag with an underscore in it. The global var is a list of variants that apply for everybody. So everybody has another tag set with dash simple in it. And then there's all the phonetic variants, which is extra variants for phonetics. And this says that if the script of the orthography is Latin, then you can just bolt in FON-IPA there, FON-IPA. And if it's not, then you can create a Latin script one using FON-IPA as well. So again, this enables you to unpack and create. So using this information and appropriate code, you can generate basically every possible tag that is known about. And then we also version the information. Okay, so I talked about software. There's a Python module available. This is the GitHub repository for all of the information. And in there is a piece of Python, which is supposed to be a reference implementation, whether you like my Python or not, of how to actually use langtags JSON to answer what are all the equivalent tags to this, and is this tag equivalent to that tag, and all that kind of information. And we work very hard within WS Tech to maintain the information in the langtags JSON file. We look at the Ethan log, we look at Unicode, we monitor ISO 639 and what changes are going on there. We keep an eye on this, that, and the other. If someone complains about a name, we clean it up and all this kind of stuff. So our job is to try and come up with a useful JSON file that is useful for you in dealing with language tags. Okay, so what starts out really simple gets complicated quite quickly. To make matters worse, tags are not necessarily stable. This is really annoying, but it's the situation we're in. If we put a tag into the JSON file, it will always exist, but it may change its tag set. It may change its normal form, therefore, and that's annoying, but it's the best we can do. It may even change its orthography as a result, because there may have been an orthography reform, and therefore the short tag has changed from being the old orthography to being the new orthography. This is really annoying for you, for those of you who tag your data, because you may need to go and re-tag it, and that is a real pain. And I'm not going to try and defend it. It's just that's what we have to deal with. Okay, so let's go back. What do we use these language tags for? What's all this pain about? Well, going back to our database key, you might receive a language tag. You then normalize it into the form that you want to keep for your database. You then look things up. Let's have a look at this SLDR, CLDR thing. Locale data. Now, we've heard about it already. Locale data markup language. Oh, those of you, sorry, you may have heard about it already if you went to the ICU session. Locale data markup language is an XML file format that contains all kinds of information about an orthography. The CLDR, the Common Locale Data Repository, which is run by Unicode, is a central repository of about 300 languages. And it's used by Microsoft, Google, Apple, all the big boys. Everybody is using this data set. They weren't in the past, but they've all agreed now that it's the best thing since sliced bread, and they're using it. It's great. Problem is, it doesn't really support all the myriad of minority languages that we deal with. So we basically embraced and extended it. We called it the SIL, Locale Data Repository, and you can find a link there to how you can get information on language. You can just put LDML API sil.org/language tag, whatever language tag you want, and you'll get back LDML information on that language. We also try to use it to feed into CLDR. We relate closely to CLDR, and we're working slowly towards working out how we can share information with each other. And we also have a few extra bits of information in there that isn't the CLDR. For example, fonts, keyboards, and other formats of sort orders. Fonts, keyboards are really useful. It's all useful information. So what kinds of information is in there? There's translations of language names, script names, region names, locale key terms. There's localizations of dates, times, time zone names, currencies, scientific units, lists, all this kind of stuff. There's the tailoring of the sorting, of capitalization, even of line breaking and segmentations, which isn't used a lot, but boy, when you need it, you need it. It's quite useful for people who are using punctuation as grammatical tone in parts of Africa and stuff like that. We need to be helping this. This is a new area we need to go into. And there are character lists. So what can you do? Well, keep us honest. We know we don't know enough information about this. This is one of these things we know we don't know. If you know information about a language tag, and you look at the lang tags JSON and you go, oh, that's rubbish, this is so wrong, please come and tell us, and we will try and sort it out. We'd like you to contribute LDML data, collect this information, because, I don't know if I said it, but if we feed it into CLDR, then it's very reliable that the big boys will pick it up and it'll start appearing on your phone. There was an example once of someone saying, I got this language on my phone. It does absolutely nothing, but it knows my language. Well, the more information you give, the more it will support that language. And if we can collect information and give it to CLDR, hopefully it will get into phones and into Windows and stuff.